Okay.
Hello, WSU Tech. Welcome to the last stream of the first day of Fix Your Content Days. That's right. The kickoff is almost kicked off, and we kind of saved one of the best for last, in my opinion. A colleague and close colleague of mine, I should say, Jennifer Stanyer, who is the Assistant Director of Disability Services. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Got it right. She's also a valued member of the A team, and I'm going to ask her to kind of talk a little bit about her path to where she's at, what disability services does, and then we're going to try to tease out a little bit of what is the difference between accommodation and accessibility, just to maybe add some clarity, especially for faculty and staff who don't deal with these terms maybe on a daily basis. But first, Jennifer, tell us about yourself.
Great. Yes. So let's see, I'll go back a little bit. I completed my bachelor's from Emporia State in rehabilitation services, and I wanted to do something like a transition type coordinator where I would help students that were transitioning from high school to college or career paths, and pretty much got through all of my college, and they said, well, you have to have a teaching degree before you can actually, be certified in Kansas to do that. So I was like, bummer, but I'll find a way, which is interesting because that's kind of what I do now. I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do. In the meantime, I've worked at a lot of different nonprofits with individuals with disabilities, and just have always had a heart for helping people, helping, individuals with disabilities have a voice and help them get access to the things that they need to have a fulfilling and quality life and quality education now. So it's really, I'm excited that I've ended up here at WSU Tech. It's been 5 years that I've been here. So I feel like I've really seen a lot in the past 5 years, and I've just been able to be a part of a lot of really exciting things.
So I think that's interesting that you said 5 years. I, for some reason, was thinking that you'd been here longer than I had, but we must have hired in around the same time. And I feel like that was kind of the moment when WSU Tech said, hey, let's really push this. Like, let's focus on our, the equity for our students. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. Actually, it was 5 years in November. So I think maybe I was here I'm not sure what month.
Yeah, I was in June of 2018. So you've got me beat.
Okay, by a little bit. But when
6
I
months
first came on, we were talking about this concept, this accessibility summer camp. And, I came across some videos, or I think I saw it on one of our Facebook channels, some pictures of our first in-person accessibility summer camp. And I mean, it was awesome. It was crazy. It was so fun, but it was awesome, just to have, I think, gosh, maybe we had started with 75 or 80 people in attendance. And we were celebrating, that was exciting for our first summer camp to be able to get that many people involved. Because the mission of this, this camp is really, I love it. It's to help others learn how they can be accessible, and how they can create accessible content, how they can think about accessibility in a different way, and just have that mindset where you're thinking about those things and thinking about others.
And I think that the first summer camp it did lay a foundation, even though it's kind of become more than that now. But we probably wouldn't be doing Fix Your Content Day stuff right now if it wasn't for that kind of model of trying to make sure that faculty stay engaged. And as I think summer camp shifted away from so much, trainings and how-tos, those are still there, but it's become more of a true conference rather than a training day. And I think that's kind of where the accessibility committee stepped into those shoes and said, well, we're going to need a bigger day. Like, we're going to need training all the time. We're going to need people there to answer questions and keep accessibility at the forefront if we're going to do this. And so I kind of feel like that, summer camp was a springboard for the accessibility committee, and now they're very different, but we're still doing things like this to celebrate internally, what we're doing with accessibility. And so one of the things I would really like for you to explain before we kind of try to define accessibility versus accommodation, and it might actually help us start having that conversation, but what does the student journey through or with you look like? Like, we as faculty, as an adjunct faculty myself, I get an accommodation letter, but if I didn't do the job that I do, I wouldn't know where that begins.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. And sometimes students don't realize, they might come straight from high school and they think that any accommodations they had in high school will carry over to college, and they don't. So it's really important for those that are supporting students with disabilities to help them understand that when they get to college, they have to request those accommodations. So they have, every college has a process. So there's usually a form that they're going to fill out saying what accommodations they think would be helpful for them in college classes. Then students usually have to provide some kind of documentation showing, what is their disability. If there's been any testing, what kind of testing has been done to determine that disability, and what kind of accommodations, if we can get them from a licensed professional's perspective, what kind of accommodations do they feel would be helpful for this student in the learning environment. So students have to go through that process. They have to disclose that they have a disability to Disability Services Office. And then once those documents are received in that office, the way it works here at WSU Tech is I'll contact those students. They'll come in and either meet with me in person, or we'll meet over the phone or Zoom. It's more of an interactive meeting to kind of, visit with them after I've been able to review the documentation and ask them those questions, because sometimes, students may have accommodations in high school, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be applicable in college. College is a whole different environment than high school. There are things that, we're not able to provide that high school, K through 12 can. For example, paras, or
I was like, could you give an example?
Yeah, so like a para or modifications of assignments or tests. We're not able to change test questions. Students pretty much have, they have the same assignments and all of that their peers do. They might just have more time on a test, maybe, or taking their test in a different location, or have copies of instructor notes or those kind of things to help them, to provide them with access.
Yeah. So I think that's where we get into this, some of the confusion between what you do and what the A team does and what I do. And so you are definitely the student facing side of this piece of the pie. And it really is a pie. We're working towards the same goal. We're trying to get students to have an equitable experience and get the education that they want. Whereas my purpose upon hiring was train faculty. And I think that as we've started, I don't know, tell me if you think, but I think the pandemic and some of the push for that and some of the money that we got and some of the grants that we currently have really brought our worlds a little closer together in looking at areas that overlap, like accessible technology, what would benefit students, but what would be usable by faculty. So I feel like there is gray area, just like there's kind of that overlap between DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. But I mean, if even with that overlap, I think it's distinct. I mean, how would you define accommodation versus accessibility to somebody maybe that was brand new to WSU Tech, like onboarding? Right.
Well, accessibility is really creating that content and that material with everyone in mind. Anyone regardless of disability. It could be, one of the examples I love to use is like automatic doors. That's helpful. An automatic door system is something that someone that might have a mobility challenge, a wheelchair user, they may use that door to get in and out of a building. But if I'm carrying a load of boxes, and I'm not able to grab and get the door open, then having that button is so nice, to be able to just hit it and have it open, and it's helping me. Same thing with
wheeling the big old Promethean board across the courtyard here at NCAT, trying to get it into the main student commons area. Exactly. I tell you what, thank goodness for that door button, because otherwise I'd be stuck outside with that Promethean board all day.
Right. And the same thing could be said for ramps,
curb cuts.
Curb cuts, ramps, you're pushing a big cart of stuff for an event, you can't have it hop the curb, it's something there that it's there, and it's it's available for those that need it, but it's also available for all of us, those things that can
I think
need it.
Right. So when you're saying it's available, I think one of the key differences, and those who know me will have heard me say this probably a million times, but I still feel like sometimes people forget that there's proactive and there's reactive. And it's not that either of those one is better than the other, and neither is going to go away. But the idea that, if you needed a curb cut and it wasn't already there, you're going to have to get somebody that can come cut concrete out and pour a foundation and whatever. And that's, it's not doable. It's not workable. It's not equitable, because now everybody else has been able to walk across the street while you're waiting for 6 months for, concrete to get poured. Apparently concrete contractors are hard to get a hold of. I've heard these days.
Exactly. But yeah, that's exactly how it is. That accommodation piece, I guess I didn't finish that, is that, fixing is that more reactive action. It's making that whatever it is accessible. Once it's been brought to light that the issue, that it's not accessible, then yeah, it's going and making that accommodation to make it accessible. And like you said, that's a perfect example of the concrete. A student should be able to have access at the same time that their peers does. So if we're not creating that content and thinking of that stuff ahead, then that student is going to be behind in getting the access to the material.
I think the more that because accommodations are never going to go away, especially because people learn in different ways, or they come to the table with different skills. We were just talking about that earlier, that, people may have different abilities with technology. Right. Depending on, if they lost their hearing or their sight or their mobility at different times in their lives. You can't just assume that, a screen reader is going to work for everyone. And so what's great is that in a pinch, we can easily put a lot of our stuff through something that will read it aloud to people. But if you've got a cognitive processing disorder on top of that, it might be really challenging for you to process auditory information in a way that is meaningful. And so having some sort of other written piece, maybe if you're blind, a Braille textbook. And so I think some people, think of accessibility as what we're doing to prevent the need for accommodation. And that's not realistic. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. Yeah, it's really trying to think of a way to make it available and accessible to all people. It benefits us all. I had a student I was working with that was made it, or maybe I heard it on a podcast, something that if you're thinking of like a screen reader being able to use material, be able to access material, then that's kind of like the pinnacle of everything. So if the screen reader can access the material, then you got a lot of you're going to be able to get it to read. But there's also that like color contrast that we don't think about, or someone may say that they are legally blind. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are completely blind. They have different levels or tiers of vision, so they may need larger font, or have magnification on their screen.
I think, as you and I have discovered, that there are some things that we have thought, hey, we've got this we've got this accessible, a screen reader can read it. And then we come to find out that that individual doesn't need a screen reader, they need magnification, and it doesn't work very well. And we've tried magnifying it and it's like blurry. And I think that's where conversations about, being able to have some of the grant money and things that we're working through to get those pieces, that when that situation arises, even though that situation may be fewer and far between than it used to be, because we've done this other work proactively, but then we still have these things. So I think, I don't know, I feel like it's the work done with accessibility makes accommodation happen quicker and easier.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, is that a fair assessment from your point in the institution?
Yes, I believe so. And, another example I can share is like videos, videos that might not have captions on them. We've had this happen in the past, and when I first started, we've made so much progress in 5 years. It's just amazing what technology has done. But if you're uploading that video, doesn't have the captions on there, well, surprise, you get a student that needs the captions in there, whether it's processing or, hearing disability, then you're scrambling. Either we're sending it out to get the captions added, which can be costly and take some time, or you as the instructor are sitting there adding those as quickly as you can to make sure that student is getting access at the same time as their peers. So,
which may not even happen if you've got an instructor that's teaching, a full load, and they have to try to find time to squeeze that in. Now that student might be waiting even a day or two, but especially in a technical world, some of our classes are 2 weeks long or less. And a day can be significant, to a student in those programs.
It really can. So, I mean, I think that it takes a mind shift, to just start learning. You don't have to know accessibility things, but if you've got, pieces of them and you can set that. I heard of this explained in this way. It's a mind shift ladder is what they called it. So you've got this mind shift, and then that there's something that you have to do or create. And so then you go and you learn the skill. So it's just taking those pieces and applying them. And once you start building that knowledge bank and you're creating that material and that content, then it just becomes natural. It's just a natural, for my example is raw links for me, like a raw website link, it's a pet peeve now. But before, I never would have even thought of that, and it's something now I see it and it's just like a big red flag to me. So, those kind of things where you're making that change in your mind, and you're looking at things in a whole different way. And then by doing that, it's automatically, it's making it accessible to others just by making those changes. When you're creating that content, saves you a lot of work, possibly a lot of time. And most importantly, it's providing access to our students in a reasonable time and a time frame, and making their experience a more positive one.
Absolutely. So I want to close with, from your seat in the park, what is like one piece of advice that you would give to faculty or staff in the arena, in disability accessibility world?
Right. Gosh, I guess I think probably a tip or an advice that I would share that I've experienced is just, don't be afraid of, if you get an accommodation letter on a student, or a student asks you about something, don't hesitate to reach out. We're all learning this. We're not all expected to know all of the answers. When you talk to that student and you understand their perspective, which I'm so thankful that I get to understand that piece of it. Because disabilities are confidential. I don't share that. If the student decides to share it, that's one thing, but it doesn't come from me. That's their story. But when you learn their story and why it is that they need it, it's incredibly rewarding, and it makes you want to go and fix it all. So don't hesitate to reach out if you don't understand what needs to happen, or you don't know how to fix something. We have a ton of people here at WSU Tech that are ready to help, and we'll get through it together, and then we'll all learn. So
that's, I think, one of the nicest things of kind of our two areas growing up together, if you will, because I kind of feel like they have is that back and forth learning, because I knew next to nothing about disability services when I started, and I still know just the tip of the iceberg, but at least I feel more confident when, as an instructor, I get an accommodation letter to, what do I do next? How do I approach a student? And I think that those are also, those are worries that, as an A-team member, you and I have talked about having some sort of training around that, just to kind of normalize that inclusivity, so that students, when they are brave enough to say, hey, I'm working with this in my life, that as instructors, as staff, that we're prepared to respond in the most respectful and courteous kind of way. So I know there are some things in the works, and I'm not going to talk about them just yet because they're not set in stone. But we might have some of that coming down the pike, thanks to the work that you and Crystal Aluko have been doing. So I just want to thank you very much for taking time out of, I know it's a busy schedule, helping students, to come and sit with us and talk a little bit on this most wonderful of Fix Your Content days.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. So, and thank all of the viewers and those watching this for the work they do. It really is a team effort, and and we're doing some exciting things. So thank you.
That's a fact.
Yes.
All right, well, I'm gonna pull up some competition updates real quick before we close out the day. Jennifer, thank you again. Everybody out there in WSU Tech land, hold on to your buns while I change screens and get some competition updates pulled up.
Have a great one, everyone.
Bye, Jen.
Bye.
All right. Got some things to just go over again. First of all, I have not yet had a chance to look at the responses in the solo tracker, but I am going to share my screen and just remind you that while you're fixing content for your unit, your group, you can also be fixing content for your pocketbook. If you fill out your solo fix tracker over the next 3 days, you will have a chance to win a $100 gift card. So I know it's one extra step, but it's one extra step that might be worth some money in your pocket, or at least a whole lot of frozen custard at Freddy's, or whatever your gift card of choice is. Don't forget, and you can find this on the YouTube channel, in the community area, which, by the way, if you haven't looked at today, you should absolutely check it out. We've had so many people participating and just having an all-around wonderful time. Let me pull that up, actually, and we'll just quickly take a look at some of the highlights of Fix Your Content Day on this community tab, which, by the way, I see we have 22 subscribers, which is about 20 more than we had this morning. So thank you for subscribing. There's not much on this channel yet, but it is the full intention of the A-team to make this the dynamic home of all things accessibility at WSU Tech, and bring you more information, more short broadcasts about accessibility initiatives in our school, and even, some tutorials and sharing of other videos out there in the world that can help you do accessibility better. But I just want to point out that we have some amazing rock stars holding our mascot ducks. Randy and Brenda, Victor and Tasha and Jennifer, even student engagement got in on the act. Thank you, Lael and Zyra. So check out the community tab. And by the way, post, like, comment. Let's have conversations. So I do want to pull up, and this is, about 24 minutes old, but we do have a leaderboard tracker here. When last I checked, and trust me, this thing has been going off the charts all day long. I turn away for 5 minutes and a totally different team has been in the lead. But right now, the pink team is 11 out of 15. The purple team is 10 of 15. Red team and yellow submarine team are tied at 9 with the green team and the blue team. And the orange team is tied at, or is in fourth at 4. So that could all change. Again, this competition is the first person to get to completion. So pink team is only 4 little completions away. We wish you all the best of luck. I'll be checking in tomorrow. In fact, I'll probably be making some videos tomorrow, especially regarding winners of our gift card drawing, which I see Chuck Kaufman and Courtney Gulick are in the chat right now. Hey, y'all. We'll make sure to get your names put into that drawing, and tomorrow morning, bright and early, I will make that happen. And I will share that out on the community page, as well as if we have a winner of the training competition overnight. Now, I will say that it is much more difficult for me to track the group fixture content competitions. If I showed you the spreadsheet of data, you would look at me with your eyes crossed. But I will try to make some headway on that tomorrow, at least to give a general idea of who might be in the lead. And with that, guys, I want to thank every single one of you who has tuned in today. And if you couldn't today, but if you take a watch of these videos a little bit later, I mean, they do live on the live tab. Thank you for tuning in. But moreover, thank you for thinking of our students. Thank you for putting in the extra effort when it's tough and maybe it doesn't seem like it applies to you. As we heard from Charlie earlier, everyone faces discouragement at some point or another about their dreams. And it's great to know that we don't have to be the source of that discouragement. And with those wise words, I want you all to have a wonderful day. I almost felt like Bob Ross there for a second, but check back tomorrow for more details. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your fixture content days, WSU Tech.